Tell me about the issue here, Alan. Tell me about what's going on.
Well, the county have decided that this is an area that needs to have traffic enforcement to stop speeding. All of us understand the need for that, but what they didn't consider in their plan was the need to allow businesses, whether it be farming or construction or any kind of industry that uses wide equipment, to go through safely. And because of them doing that, they've actually made the road less safe. Because if you're a car and you come down here and you panic a little bit, then of course you put other people at risk. I've corresponded with the county on 2 or 3 occasions. They explain the reasons for them. I understand the reasons, but they failed to consider that there was other businesses going on here besides commuter vehicles. I made suggestions about other ideas, speed bumps or move the bollards off to the side. That never got a response. It seems like maybe we have a situation where they don't consider our businesses to be important. And maybe I'm wrong on that, but that's certainly the impression I got from them. The one thing that the lady from the county threw out there was that it was a child safety issue. As a father and grandfather, I'm very aware we do not want to hurt our children or grandchildren, but to penalize agriculture and other businesses for the sake of that is I think, an overreach. My first thought for enforcement for speeding is the OPP. We pay a considerable amount of money every year to have the OPP in Hamilton Township. I think that they would agree. In fact, I've talked to one OPP officer that was totally in agreement that they should be the ones doing the enforcement. I know they can't be here all the time. I don't think they have to be here all the time. I think the word gets out if they do enforcement in areas that people slow down. That I think is the first line of defense. When they do this, it gives me the impression that they don't really care, and I find that disturbing.
Was it done surprisingly fast? Any communication, any discussion with any farmers or businesses?
We have, in Northumberland County, we have an Ag Advisory Committee that meets with county representatives. It used to be monthly, now it's basically every 3 months. It was not talked about before they were there, to my understanding. I wasn't at those meetings, but I took pictures of it. The Ag Advisory meeting was 2 weeks ago. I took pictures of this Tuesday and forwarded them to farm members on that committee, that they brought it to the county's attention that we weren't happy. And we have had correspondence back since. Nothing that I wanted to hear, though. So
in other words, this doesn't appear to be, it's non-discussion, more or less. It's done.
It's done. They, without a whole lot of thought, I would say, and I mean that's going to ruffle some feathers when somebody says that. But if you don't put a feeler out to all the people that are affected one way or another by a decision, of course you're going to have a few people in favor, and you're going to have a whole lot of disgruntled ones, and that's what we see now. Everywhere. I'm not just talking on the roads, but we see decisions made that don't seem to have any common sense to them.
I would think, and I'll talk to other people about this, but I would think, given that we're in a rural community, these might work in other places that are non-rural, but here...
Well, They would work in town. I don't have any doubt of that. But if you go into Cobourg and see the bollards and the calming areas that they put on King Street, and then talk to the town employees that have to plow the roads, they curse them. They say they don't work, and they cause confusion and more danger than what they try to stop. And you could see from your pictures here that you took that we can't get down with farm equipment at all. For instance, the opening on the road there is about 10'4". A tractor with duals is a minimum of 12 feet wide. The combine is about 14 feet wide. Like a hay equipment that you tow behind that goes out to one side, it'll be 15 feet wide. The one thing that they don't, and I'll back up. In one of my emails to the county, I asked them if they were going to assume liability. Of course, they did not answer. I wasn't really expecting an answer, but they didn't answer. A tire on a sprayer is $5,000. A combine tire runs between $3,000 and $5,000. A tractor tire runs between $2,000 and $4,000. Like if we tear, like I brought this angle iron along to show what that sharp corner. This is a piece of 2-inch angle iron, and those bollards are fastened with 2-inch angle iron. The bollards are designed to tip over if you run over them, but when you tip the bollard over, it tips away from the sharp point. So that point is exposed, and if you catch that on any kind of a sidewall of a tire, whether it be car, truck, tractor, you're going to slice it open. And then you're going to have a flat, and if you happen to be a person driving a car with a little bit of inexperience and it's a front tire, you end up having them in the ditch or having a major safety concern. So those things alone are not thought out. And in one of my responses that I received from the county, it was suggested that we just drive over them because they're made to be flexible and bend back up. And my answer to that is you don't pay $100,000 plus to buy farm equipment and drive over stuff. We try to avoid that. And to be quite frankly, that made me mad because I said, you know, you don't buy a car to drive over curbs. You don't buy a tractor or combine to drive over posts. Like, it's too expensive. We have all these wires, electronic wires and hydraulic hoses that run along the bottom of a lot of our machines now. If you happen to rip one off, like it's hundreds of dollars to fix or thousands of dollars to fix, and you have to wait while a service guy comes from maybe 100 miles away. All these things that we put up with on a daily basis in our farming career, because it can happen anywhere. But why would you do something that makes it probably more prevalent to happen?
And I would guess, and last question before I talk to a few others, I would guess it's if the discussion was there, it's needless and could have been avoided.
Well, I don't see there's any need. I think we have all kinds of enforcement in place in our laws, like OPP, and we could have had bumps on the road to slow people down. We could have even moved the bollards over next to the guardrails. That would give us 15 feet of width to go. Discussion or interaction with your groups has got to be the first thing you do, not the last. And they tend to get their back up pretty easy. You know, you can't make suggestions, or of course you're not being an expert, you're into their jurisdiction, and they don't like that.
And tell me, Linda, you had some personal experience with these sort of at night?
Yes. A week ago Friday night I was coming home from my daughter's house, and I come upon it and I met an oncoming vehicle with those little new blue lights in it, and I had a very hard time getting around the corner. It really scared me badly. Tell me, explain why. Like, explain about the reflectors and how they are, if you can, for somebody that I haven't seen it at night. Well, it's overwhelming. It just doesn't stop. There it is, all these things coming up and then the lights hitting you in your eyes. It's very hard on that hill.
For a person that hasn't been along here, could you see it being confusing, and tell me why if you can?
Yes, because there's no ditch, there's no shoulders to go on, and it hits you all of a sudden. Even though they have the white lines, you slow down, you figure it's for bikes. At night, then you come over the hill and there it is. And it's very confusing and it's very startling at first.
John, can you tell me, it's a little bit more about the farming community, what these things, what it could happen, you owning a camper, if you can explain?
Well, what happens is that this lane is 10 feet wide. My camper trailer is 8 foot wide, plus you've got the expansion on there for your awning that comes down as well. So that takes up to 10 feet. If you're coming down through here and you misjudge or miscalculate what's going on in your lane, and you hit one of these bollards, it'll go underneath your camper. Now the campers are made today, all they have is this waxy cardboardy material underneath there, which will tear or rip with one of those. You have your lines that come off the axle and go down, electric brakes go down into your brake pads, therefore they get ripped off. And then you're going to turn around and you also have your propane gas line as well. That's underneath there that could be damaged.
So this is something that, I was going to say wait till he goes, but...
That's it.
Yeah. Is he going to go back north? Or do you know? I don't know. This is something that poses a risk, safety-wise.
It does. It poses a huge risk safety-wise, because if you lose control or if you hit one of these things, you may lose control because of the fact you don't know what it is. So therefore you're trying to judge and balance your trailer back out and your vehicle at the same time.
Like I was talking to Alan too, he said the county was never did come back to him about liability. So it's one of those things where, like you say, if it poses a risk and if there is liability, the county sure is taking a, I was going to say neutral stand, but it might even be less than that on it.
Well, I think what most situation will be, more than likely, will insurance company pays your damage under your vehicle, and they in turn then go ahead and sue the insurance company that the county's under. So it'll end up in limbo for years.
And this is something that most likely could have been avoided through discussion.
Yes, correct. You're exactly correct. Okay. And with public discussion, not just one or two people, but the public. There you go, prime example right there. And the problem is they're 6 inches off the pavement, and you hit one of those, you still have the bolts are sticking up there, and they will do damage as well.
What are your thoughts on these?
My thoughts on these? I'm a little bit hesitant to promote them because there's the obvious problem of what happens if you have to hit it with a car or a truck. I think they could cause damage. I think I've talked to other people here and they think it's, if you're the first time through it at night, the reflections can be kind of confusing and you might swerve into the wrong lane. I think, to the county's credit, they said they're studying it at this point, and hopefully they'll maybe come to the conclusion that maybe it's not the best thing, especially for farm implements. I mean, it's not just the farmers that are saying they don't like it, but there are some residents too that are a little bit scared of the danger hazard of it. So I think Durham region has something like an elongated speed bump, maybe a 10 or 15 long speed bump that would slow you down, and there's no physical obstruction till you get it through. Whereas these, if you got the wrong piece of equipment on, it could cause a bit of damage to it. So hopefully, when the study's done, they'll maybe change it.
Denise, can you tell me what they're called out there and what it is?
Sure. So what we've installed are called flexible bollards. So they're a traffic calming initiative that we're implementing. It's part of a 3-phase approach that we're using in Cold Springs, a pilot project.
And is it a project meaning, like, is it a test project or is it a permanent thing?
It is a pilot. So through our transportation master plan, we heard from the community that speeding was really a concern, particularly in our hamlets. And so what was recommended is that we implement traffic calming in our hamlets. So before going and implementing measures at all of them, we wanted to identify a couple locations and implement some testing to see what was effective before we rolled it out in all other locations.
Is there room, from what the farmers are saying, and other people, not just farmers, people with campers, things like that, just because of the width, everyone is saying that it's doing the job very well. but there's confusion or questions about, is there a quote better way? Like, is there anything with elongated speed bumps that could be put in or anything like that? Or is there room for change or discussion, I guess?
Absolutely. The idea with the pilot project is that we implement measures, we monitor, we take feedback from the community, and then we go back and assess and determine how effective, how viable and feasible it is to implement in the long run.
And has there been discussions with the groups or the interested groups?
Yep, so as I said, this was part of the Transportation Master Plan where we collected feedback from the community, and that was approved in 2016. Since then, for the last 3 years, we've been implementing this pilot project in Cold Springs and Welcome. So we've been speaking with the community as well, so the community that lives there, but also to residents and through the Agriculture Advisory Committee, we've also been discussing speeding issues and this pilot project at that location.
Somebody brought up, and I don't know this, will it be, do you know how long the pilot project is?
So for each phase, we want to implement for a few months in order to collect data that is actually meaningful and gives a good determination of whether or not things are being effective. So when we first implemented pavement markings and signage, we implemented that for quite a few months, collecting data throughout, and then we also introduced the radar speed signs with the increased pavement markings, and again kept that in place for a few months. So the intention for this third phase with the bollards is to implement until the end of August in order for us to be able to collect some speed data early on as well as after they've been in place for a month or so. And then having that data as well as the feedback from the public, we can then make some decisions going forward.
Is it, and again, forgive me, this is from what everybody says out there, whether they agree with this type of speed reducing activity or not, it's working, but it's just a type of. So if the results come back that it's working, but people still aren't happy, could it change?
We're still open to change. We're still open to looking at ideas. One of the challenges that we face is that it is a county road system. It's our arterial road system that moves goods and services. So we are always, when we're looking at traffic calming measures, we're having to look at the safety of all of the traveling public. So sometimes having too intrusive of methods can also cause other health and safety issues. But we're still open to looking at all methods and finding the best solution moving forward.
And this will be here till the end of August, you said?
That's the plan at this point.
And then what happens? It takes out and then further study?
And then we'll review all of the data that we've collected, and we'll be taking that forward to council.
Beautiful. The last question is, and I don't know whether it just goes hand in hand with it, I guess I don't think there's anything you can do about it. The one concern that was raised to me, and I don't know whether you're aware of this, but it's a metal piece that's about 2 inches that goes up at the bottom of the bollards, if I can say that. And the tractor tires could go over this, and if you're not aware of this, there's nothing you can say about it. But they were wondering about that, because if they run over the placard, bollard, it comes upright, but it's anchor that it's attached to is 2 inches, and the farmers were saying that their tires go anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000, but it's just because it's such a sharp, and it's not knife sharp, but it's sharper than most things on the road, it could easily cut their tire. Anything with that, or were you aware of that?
It's been brought to our attention. We've been speaking with the supplier and also other municipalities that we know have used these in the past, and from our understanding it hasn't been a concern or an issue that has come up or there's been any issues. It's something that we'll take note of and